Good morning, everybody. We are learning our Maamer, LoSihiyeh Mishakela, a full devotion. We are actually going to be using this version today. So get very excited for anybody who didn't have this version and now we're using that one. So I'm pretty sure it's, yeah. So I realized that I've been doing this in Kavana, but it's a very powerful Maamer, and okay, I'm gonna do the instructions soon. So I love to check Hayomim, because sometimes the Hayomim for the day has an amazing flavor for the day. And today's Hayomim actually, I feel like, has what to do with our Maamer. So I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna read it in English though. Okay, on the eve of Pesach Sheni, Tachnun is recited in the Mincha. So, one second, Pesach Sheni. Whoa, we miscounted. Okay, Pesach Sheni apparently is on Friday. And I thought it was on Shabbos. Okay, good to know. So apparently this afternoon is Erev Pesach Sheni, so get ready because Pesach Sheni apparently is tomorrow. So, the Hayomim for today I felt was very appropriate for our Maamer, and I'll explain it. In the years during which the Alter Rebbe delivered short Maamarim, he once taught the phrase, "Know what is above you," can be interpreted as meaning, know that what is above, in the sublime partsufim and spheres, is from you. It is dependent upon man's divine service, which speaks about... Yes, here. The Frierdiker Rebbe wrote a letter and he spoke about similar things, and he quoted there, "God is your shadow at your right hand." The Baal Shem Tov commented in Kesar Shem Tov, "A shadow follows the movements of one's limbs. Similarly, every action that we perform spirals upward to the spiritual realms, generating intense light, or heaven forbid, the opposite in those realms." So just like as our Maamer is saying that our actions make a difference, we make an impact on Hashem, our time needs to be, guarded, and our actions do make a difference. We're here and we make an impact in the world. So that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So we, even in today's Hayom, it talks about these aspects of what we're learning in our Maamer. Okay, so we just finished Ois Ches. Okay, so I'm going to give another heads up. In this Sefer, the way they split up the Maamer is only into 11 chapters. In this Sefer, they split it up into 14. So the last chapter, which over here is chapter 11, over here it gets split up into several other chapters. So I'm going to try and keep, basically, from this point on, right now we're just at chapter 9, but I just wanted to give you a heads up that I'm going to start calling it by the chapters accordingly. Okay. So we finished speaking yesterday about the two types of barrenness, right? So we said the first type of barrenness, and this again, it has to do with our Maamer, the original. We started at a pasuk. We gave a whole beautiful explanation of what's avodah. What does it mean that we actually affect our actions, make an effect on Hashem? Not only that, but what's the basis of our relationship with Hashem needs to be from Kabbalah Soul, that Hashem is the king, and we do what he says. He says to jump, so we jump, right? But we also were very, very clear about the fact that that's not enough. We can't live on Kabbalah Soul the rest of our lives, and it's not a long-lasting, it's just the minimum, it's the bottom line. But in reality, the entire purpose of our Nefesh Elikis to come down into this world is to create a love, to create an appreciation of our Nefesh Bahamis. That way the selfish, the childish, the immature part of us needs to mature up and start loving doing Hashem's will. They start loving getting up and davening. It needs to start loving. And again, it should not come as a forceful thing. I know many people that, when they go through personal struggles, they're going through a hard time, they just, grit. It's like, I need to force myself to be happy. I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna be b'simcha because it says be b'simcha and simcha, 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 simcha. That's not the point. That's the bottom. That's the basis. If that's what you're up to, so then great. That's what you're up to. But realize that that's not the be-all, end-all. To really have a vaida is to start taking that child part of you, that is essential part that struggles, and say, how can I speak to it in a loving manner and explain to it that being b'simcha is better for it? Just like a child, you can't just force a child to be b'simcha. You gotta be b'simcha, you gotta do the right thing. It doesn't work long term. You can force him for 5 seconds, and then after that, he's gonna cry. So too with our inner child, we have to be very, very careful. We have to be very gentle. We have to be very loving, and we have to speak its language. Why are you struggling? What is the struggle? Analyze it. What's going on in your life? How can we talk about this? How can we talk this through? And how can we really bring that the simcha should be essential? It should really come from that childish part. So that is the Nefesh Elokis's job. Its job is to come into this world and convince and lovingly educate the Nefesh Bahamas to want to do the right thing, to want to do all the good things. And it's not in a forceful manner, just like a Chabad house. When you first walk in, they don't come and slap you on the face and say, go shape up and do the right thing. Chas v'shalom. Everybody would walk out PO'd, right? In reality, they treat you nicely. They welcome you in with open heart and open arms, and they hold you and they love you at the point where you're holding, and they lovingly educate you and teach you new and amazing ways, right? So too with our Nefesh Bahamas, we have to treat it just like it's a child, and treat it with love. And that is the purpose. That's how our Avodah grows, right? So once we have that growth, then we're able to, when we treat it with love, we're able to create a love. We're able to create a love from the Nefesh Bahamas towards Hashem. Just like I'm sure, I know many people who their Chabad Shliach chase them around campus or, whatever point, and they're like, oh my gosh, this weird guy with a beard, or oh my gosh, this weird lady with, her long sleeves. And then by the end, you end up loving that lady as she becomes, your second mother. So it can turn that childish part of us, that immature part of us that doesn't appreciate, it can turn and really turn around and love that thing. So it could, so to our Nefesh Bahamas. Now, yesterday we spoke about the 2 levels of barrenness. What does that mean in spiritual terms? It means the first one is someone who is so self-involved, and not necessarily in a selfish way, but they like what they like and they do what they do, and this is their schedule. This is, where sometimes we get a little rigid with our lifestyle, with our schedule, with our time, with our efforts, with our, with where we want to invest ourselves. And we fail to recognize that there's a greater purpose and something else needs us. Someone else needs us. So this could be even with our marriages. I have my schedule. This is what I want, and this is how I want it done. And he's going to have to, work around my schedule. I want to daven at this time, and I want to, I need a break at this time. And we get rigid in our lifestyles. And once we get rigid, our cup, so to speak, when you have a cup and you fill it up all the way to the top, you can't receive anymore. So to here, this person isn't able to receive the call of Hashem saying, hi, dear Yid, I need you to do a shlichus over there, or I need you to do your shlichus over here. I need you to do something, but we're not capable of listening because we're too self-involved. That could also mean in spiritual terms. It means we're too self-involved in the things we want to do as opposed to things we're meant to do. So if I want to daven by Veda for the next 17 billion hours, that's beautiful and dandy, but I'm missing the point. That's not where Hashem needs me. At least me. I know for myself that's not where Hashem needs me. Hashem needs me to go teach a shir. Hashem needs me to go help my children with their online school. Hashem needs me to educate Menachem and teach them Aleph Beis. Hashem needs me to, I am needed in so many other places that my davening needs to be powerful in a shorter amount of time. I can't spend all day davening by Avodah, right? So we need to be conscious about where we are needed, and that might be at your job. That's a beautiful and wonderful thing, okay? Okay, so we discussed that that's the first type. The first type is somebody who's not able to feel emotions, who's not able to feel love and a appreciation and awe, respect for Hashem, because we're too self-involved. And therefore the womb, so to speak, doesn't exist because it's too full. There's nothing there. The second type we discussed of barrenness of a woman that's not able to give children, give birth or have children, is, and again, we're talking in spiritual terms, is somebody who opens themselves up to listen to Hashem and the call that they're meant to receive, and who has what we call the seed that impregnates, right? Which is the seed is doing the term mitzvah. So even if you open yourself up and you say, wow, I'm going to live in like the spiritual realms and I'm going to be so sensitive to what Hashem wants from me. But then in the end, we get lazy. We don't actually do what the Eibusher asked of us. Then we're not putting the seed in the right place, so to speak. So the seed equals learning Torah and doing the actual mitzvahs that Hashem wants from us. And once we open ourselves up and we put the seed in, right? This is Anatomy 101. Supposedly the next step is that there's a child, right? There's going to be the impregnation. There's going to be a child that's going to be born. But just like we see in the physical terms, that every single time that there is a child, it's because Hashem made that happen. Just because you put a seed and an embryo and an egg, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be a successful pregnancy and a child's going to be born. The Eibusher has to give his bracha, and the Eibusher has to give his consent and make that a reality. So to here, even though we open ourselves up and sometimes we do the right thing at the right time in the right place and all those things, Hashem is the one that really gives us that ability to say, wow, that was so inspirational. Sometimes we try our hardest, we open up the Sefer and we daven and we do all the right things, but Hashem is the one that has to give us the brachas. And yesterday we gave a bit of an example about shidduchim, that as much as, our full job is to do every single thing under our power to be able to be as prepared, as, ready to get married as possible. But in reality, Hashem is the one that knows where your husband is, and Hashem knows that, as I joked about yesterday, that my husband had to wait for me. My husband started shidduchim before I finished high school, and he had to wait for me to finish, and it wasn't his fault. I'm sure the Eibusher had what he had to work on, and he did work on things during the time while he, quote unquote, waited for me. But Hashem was the only one that knew that as much as, quote unquote, he did everything he could to a certain extent, he still had to wait. So our job is not to give up, is not to get complacent. Our job is to do every single thing under the sun and under the moon to prepare ourselves and to be ready for the next step in our lives, and to also have the trust and have the realization that Hashem is the one that gives us that last push to create something. Okay, now we left off and we spoke a drop about what in this book is translated as miscarriage, but in reality, in context of the Maamer, is not necessarily miscarriage, meaning that a woman loses that child within the womb. But what we're talking about in context of the Maamer is that, one second. Oh, here we go. In context of the Maamer is that somebody who chas v'shalom loses her young, so it's once a child is born and they're part, of the world and they're part of the family, and chas v'shalom, that child, the parents outlive the child, so the child passes away before its time. And what does that mean in spiritual terms? And that's what we're going to discuss a little bit further today, is that you actually do everything, you listen to what Hashem needs from you, you do your shlichus where it's meant to be done, you actually do it, not just you hear the call of Hashem, but you actually do it. You do the constant learning of Torah, and you do the constant action of doing the mitzvahs, and then Hashem gives you that birth, that zaza atzmi, is that bracha that you should give birth to emotions, and you actually feel inspiration. And I spoke about it yesterday, that some people, it happens to them when they're in Meron, and for like Ba'omer, or it happens to them when they're touching the kaisel, or it happens to them. Somebody recently messaged me that they took the Maamer, they learned it with a friend over Shabbos, like their roommate, this past Shabbos, and she said, wow, I was like on this high. That's the high that we're looking for. That's the like emotional relationship. That's the wow, that was so cool. that we're looking for. And so sometimes you do all those things and you get that emotion. The emotions, remember what we said, intellect is the parents, emotions are the children. So our emotions that gave birth, they were birthed by us thinking about this Maamer, by us. And I strongly encourage everybody, if you have, please, even if you just have this copy, take some time to learn it over Shabbos. And when you learn it inside, it's not just Michal's emotion that we hear, but it also becomes your own. So she did, and she felt that. She felt inspiration. She felt that love. She felt that awe, and she was saying how beautiful it was and how now she's trying to keep it. So that is called losing the young, because a young, Chassidus are not losing, but that's the young. Gave birth to the emotion, and now your job is to maintain it. So now we're going to discuss that section. And I'm going to give, sorry, I know this is a long introduction, but I will say that when I was first learning, meaning years ago when I first learned this Maamer, this particular ice kind of gave me a funky feeling. And it has to be understood in context, because what it's going to say is that how do you not lose that oomph, that inspiration that we got that one time where we did not one time, but like we did this thing and we felt so inspired. How do we not lose it? And he talks about very lofty, not lofty, but he talks about levels that not, for me personally, I don't live with this all the time, because my first job is to at least get started, at least make sure I'm doing the right thing at the right time, and make sure I do those things, right? Not just know what I'm meant to be doing, but also actually do them. And that in of itself is a full-time job for me most of the time. So what it's talking about in this ice, it's a wonderful thing to learn, and it's a wonderful thing to know what we could strive for, but it doesn't mean that just because someone's not there, not good enough. Chas v'shalom. It's just something to note within context of what we can do once we reach there, what we can do to keep it going. Okay? So let's not get lost in that part. Okay. There is another point about which a person must take counsel within his soul. We're on page 155 of Lessons in Sefer HaMaamarim. Okay? In the paragraphs that follow, the Rebbe explains how to fulfill the charge. There will not be a woman who loses her young, right? So now we're trying to prevent losing that emotional inspiration. Until this point, he had explained the parallels to pregnancy, birth, and raising children in our divine service. In other words, the development and expression of our spiritual emotions. Nevertheless, as a person proceeds in his daily life, it is possible that due to his worldly involvement and preoccupation with his own concerns, these emotions may wither, comparable to a woman who loses her young. Right? So we might get that boost of inspiration on Shabbos. I know this happens to me sometimes. I'm like such a high on Shabbos, and I turn on my phone, Matzi Shabbos, and it's like, it just like all goes out the window, and I lose that inspiration. So this is preventing from losing that inspiration, okay? The Rebbe therefore explains how to prevent this, clarifying the mindset necessary to enable a person's spiritual emotions to continually thrive. Okay, big deal. We want to keep those things going. It is possible that a person may carry out his divine service in a desirable manner with regards to both his intellectual achievements and his emotional development, and therefore his spiritual feelings are consciously expressed, right? So we did our part and we feel these things. We feel inspiration. We feel love for Hashem. Moreover, they are not mere fantasy, but genuine love and fear that impact his observance of the Torah and its mitzvahs. In addition to actually observing the Torah and its mitzvahs, he knows the mystical intent, the kavanah associated with the mitzvahs, and is aware of the spiritual energies drawn down through the observance of the mitzvahs, right? So not only did this person do everything she needed to, right? She knew that now it's time to daven, so she davened. She knew that now it's time to learn, so she learned. She knew now it's time to, take care of your children, so she took care of her children. Now it's time to go to work, so she went to work. Now she did the right things in the right time. And not only that, but she understood the importance of doing those things in the right time, even to the extent that she was able to know the kavanah. And I mean, I'll speak for myself. I don't necessarily know the kavanah that I'm meant to have at every single mitzvah, so I'm not necessarily at this point yet. So let's take this, with that level of understanding. And we're talking about a high level. Mitzvah Hashem, we should all reach it, and that's why we need to learn how to do it. But let's not get stuck on it. So I'm going to skip the square brackets. In relation to Maamerim in general, square brackets are it's a skippable thing. If you want to learn them, that's great, but it's very lofty, and we're skipping it. Okay, so I'm skipping the rest of page 156, and I'm going to start on page 157. Okay. In carrying out all of the above, his divine service fulfills the charge alluded to in the pasuk, and you shall serve Hashem your Lord. The expression God your Lord, Havaya Elokeichem, implies that. Okay, Havaya. What did we say about Havaya? Havaya is the level of Seder Shtalshlus, right? Havaya is in relation over here, right? This is Seder Shtalshlus, and Elokeichem is the level of within nature. So Elokim is the same gematria as Teva, which is nature. So we're able to see levels of Elokim within our nature, right? So the fact that gravity works comes from Elokim, and anything from Seder Shtalshlus is Havaya. Okay, so now hopefully that'll make more sense. Havaya, the aspect of God that is past, present, and future as one, and on a higher level, the aspect of Havaya that transcends Seder Shtalshlus, the chain-like progression of spiritual existence. As explained above, there are two dimensions to Hashem's name. Havaya, one that brings into being the world and the structure of existence associated with it, and one that transcends that structure. And this level of Havaya, right? So this high and lofty name of Havaya, which again, a piece of it is somewhere up here, but the relation to Seder Shtalshlus, right, becomes Elokeichem. In other words, your strength and your vitality. God's name Elokim is associated with the quality of strength. And similarly, the Hebrew word Elokim is numerical equivalent to Hateva, nature. Implied is that a person should feel that godliness is his strength and his nature. In other words, he should identify with God in a personal way, right? So we worked on such a level that we did our part. We were so aware of what we were meant to do. We did every kavanah, we knew all the parts, and we got this emotional feeling, and we're maintaining that emotional inspiration at all times, right? And so we're able to realize, and we're able to feel in our lives that even the part that's lofty of Hashem is able to live, and it gives us strength. It gives us our nature. It becomes a part of our living life in our lives, right? So it's our strength and our vitality. Now, nevertheless, right? So even such a person that reached such a level, Mitzvah Hashem, we should all reach such a level. But even such a person that reached such a level, one must be careful not to feel satisfied with his divine service, right? So even such a person who's at that point, you have to realize it doesn't stop there. We don't just give up, right? So for example, we have a wonderful day of davening, and it's so beautiful, and we feel this like, wow, inspiration, we're on a high, where somebody reviewed the Maamer on Shabbos and are on the high. But if they then, Sunday morning, they wake up late and they feel groggy and they scratch their belly and, they watch YouTube videos all day, we weren't able to maintain it. So it's a constant, we're constantly growing, we're constantly moving, we're growing beings that continue. For then, if he will remain stationary, right? If he'll get stuck at that point, he'll be like, oh, wow, that was amazing. That was so cool. And again, it doesn't mean don't give yourself credit. That enjoy the fact that you reach that level. That's beautiful, but don't get stuck by it. He pauses and does not proceed any further in his divine service. Such feelings of self-satisfaction can cause the love and fear that have already been spawned, been birthed, and expressed to cease thriving, and indeed to cease to exist entirely. The concept of one who loses her young mentioned above. Moreover, even when he is carrying out his divine service with love and fear, his divine service will be constrained, restricted by the limits of his self-satisfaction. He'll be so proud of himself that he'll be like, okay, that's it, I'm done. I'm doing great. Doing awesome today. So it doesn't mean don't give yourself credit and enjoy it. Obviously enjoy it, but don't let that get you stuck. Don't let it get you stuck, okay? They'll be restricted by limits of his self-satisfaction. This is the implication of the phrase, there will not be a woman who loses her young or who is barren in your land. Your land, eretz, refers to the concept of will, ratzon. A person should not feel any self-satisfaction from his divine service. Obviously, such an individual should also not feel his own personal desires, for then, meaning ratzon, for then, as mentioned above, he would have a full vessel that cannot hold anything else. He would not have a receptacle, a capacity to appreciate truth at all. In other words, the analogy of the first type of a barren woman described above. However, to fulfill the charge, there will not be a woman who loses her young. He must also rise above all feelings of self-satisfaction. So again, it's a beautiful level to reach, and we need to strive to reach it. The trick is that once we get there, and once we feel all these good feelings towards Hashem, and we have inspiration, and we can't just say, wow, remember that one day yesterday where I had such great inspiration? I am so totally awesome now. Well, you are awesome now, but don't get stuck with that. Don't get stuck there. We have to constantly be growing and being an empty vessel and constantly emptying out to be able to see what does Hashem want from me and not just what I want from the world. Okay? Now, Mitzvah Hashem, tomorrow we will continue with chapter 10, Ois Yud. And I'm very, very, very excited to continue with everybody. Mitzvah Hashem. I think we're going to continue in this book tomorrow as well. So I'll see you guys tomorrow.